Feingold from the Taiwanese capital of Taipei. Ross, good to see you. It was surprising to see that kind of frustration break out at that Foxconn plant. I mean, that was violent. Granted, we don't see that very often, but do you think it's representative of what many citizens out there are feeling?
Well, certainly in a country with as large a population, which has been facing such serious restrictions recently and at various times over the past nearly 3 years soon, the frustration exists. We should also keep in mind a few things, though. Protests in China are not as rare as we often think they are, notwithstanding the closed nature of the political system. For example, protests over wages or property disputes, I'm referring to the pre-COVID period, those are not unheard of, but typically we don't see video coming out of these
Exactly.
kinds of violent confrontations between factory workers and police. So that's a bit unusual.
Yeah, okay, so with these lockdowns, yes, the zero COVID policy has likely saved lives. It has made outbreaks smaller than they could be. But given that COVID is going to be in the world perhaps indefinitely, people are going to be exposed to it over time. So if you're preventing outbreaks now, aren't you just going to have those outbreaks later? Is the Chinese government starting to realize that?
Oh, they probably know that. It's very much a timing issue as well. What I mean is, from their perspective, they had good news with the Party Congress. So even though from outside China we might look at it very differently, including the incident with former President Hu Jintao, but for them, they look at it as a successful event. And then afterwards, there was an announcement that certain restrictions were going to be removed. So they're also stressing good economic news where they can as well. So they were hoping for a period of good news, and maybe then they could announce further relaxation of COVID-related restrictions. But now they can't because they're in the middle of an outbreak, which, frankly, by the standards of some other countries, especially at a percentage of the population
Right.
basis, 30,000 cases for 1.4 billion people, we'd say no need to overreact. But obviously the leadership is not there yet where they're willing to take the view that this is something we just have to live with.
Has not been good news for the economy, though. I mean, it's been struggling. And you mentioned the Party Congress. They even chose to wait to announce their forecast numbers on that, which was pretty stunning, telling you, they didn't want to break the mood.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, they try and pick and choose where they can find good news and emphasize that. So when there's some good news about foreign investors, they'll emphasize that. German chancellor bringing a big delegation of corporate leaders who are eager to invest in China. That's something they could focus on. But these kinds of lockdowns, especially when they're in the major cities where multinational investors tend to have their operations, whether it's in the services industry or the manufacturing industry, or in the case of what we saw over the past few days, the Zhengzhou factory of Foxconn, which makes iPhones, it's certainly very bad for the image in the eyes of multinational companies. And they don't have an answer for that, the government. Right? Again, as we were discussing, they could either take a live with it view or they could keep coming with this very strict lockdown approach. But it does have a very negative effect about perceptions of doing business in China.
All right, Ross, thanks very much. Good to talk to you.
Thank you.